He asked the question that every camera in the room was waiting for, and the silence that followed was the kind of silence that makes people lean forward. Mike Huckabee, measured and deliberate, had framed the debate about faith and leadership as if it were a technical exam. Does a candidate's religion inform their decisions? And if so, how deeply must they understand sacred texts to lead? He asked whether the Bible is inerrant, which translations she trusted, and whether those beliefs shaped her public duties. It sounded like a challenge. It sounded like a test. Jasmine Crockett did not flinch. She did not reach for a soundbite. Instead, she answered in a voice that was calm, clear, and direct. The voice of someone who had done the homework others assume you either have or do not. She began by insisting that her faith was genuine and that Scripture mattered to her life and work. Then she moved from the personal to the technical without hesitation. The Bible, she said, is inspired and central to moral reflection. But the question of translation is not merely academic. It is consequential. She named the original languages, Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek, and explained that translations like the King James, the NYRF, and the ESV each carried different strengths and different historical burdens. She said that theology without attention to linguistic nuance can easily become dogma, and that leaders who quote Scripture should do so responsibly, aware of how a single word in Greek can shift meaning. The room reacted the way rooms do when they hear something precise in a context that usually rewards slogans. A ripple of surprise, a low murmur, phones tilted up to catch the moment. Huckabee's face moved through a range of expressions, from confident expectation to a visible, slow recognition that this was not the easy rebuttal he had expected. He pressed further, as a good interviewer should. He asked about KJV-only perspectives, about textual variants, and whether a faith that insists on a single, pure translation risks excluding people or weaponizing Scripture. Crockett answered each point with evidence and poise. She acknowledged respect for tradition, noting the historical place of the King James for many English-speaking congregations. But she rejected the notion that linguistic purity should be a litmus test for sincerity. She explained that the New Testament's Greek uses multiple words translated as love, and that those differences, agape and phileo, for example, are not mere academic curiosities, but keys to how communities live out care and policy. She referenced the Septuagint, the role it played in early Christian formation, and the difficult debates of early councils that shaped canonical understanding. It was theology spoken at a level of detail that most political theater never reaches. As she spoke, her tone never moved into triumphalism. There was no condescension. Instead, there was an invitation. If you care about Scripture, study it. If you care about people, apply it thoughtfully. When she connected this study to governance, she landed the most important line of the evening. Faith, she argued, must not be a weapon used to silence or marginalize. It must be a guide that cultivates empathy and the courage to protect dignity for all citizens. Leaders should let Scripture inform values without allowing Scripture to be manipulated into a tool for exclusion. The exchange changed the tenor of the event. What began as a potentially humiliating ambush for a younger lawmaker became a public lesson in intellectual humility. Viewers at home, many raised to expect flashes and talking points, heard instead a linguist's precision and a jurist's caution. Social platforms picked up the clip within minutes. The part where she speaks softly about the nuances of Scripture, the moment she recites the Shema in a cadence that implies study rather than theatrics, the passage where she contrasts agape and phileo and explains how policy choices reflect those differences. People clipped the segment and captioned it with words like calm, schooled, and unexpected depth. Those with theological training pointed to the references and applauded her accuracy. Those without it felt, for the first time in many public debates, like the stakes of religious conversation were being raised rather than lowered. It is worth pausing on what she did not do. She did not attack Huckabee personally. She did not reduce the exchange to identity politics. She did not convert a theological disagreement into a partisan victory lap. Instead, she used knowledge to expand the space of the discussion. That is an important difference. The crowd and the viewers online could sense it. They saw a moment where preparation and calm changed the dynamic of a test into a conversation, and they responded accordingly. The fallout was immediate and multi-layered. Conservative commentators debated whether she had rejected a posture of reverence for tradition or simply advocated for a broader, more inclusive approach to Scripture. Religious newsletters and seminaries dissected her references. Theology students shared clips with timestamps and translations. Some pockets of conservative audiences bristled, claiming that she was relativizing sacred truth. Moderate viewers and many younger faith communities, however, embraced the exchange as a demonstration that being deeply religious can mean being deeply learned. Not reflexive, but reflective. Huckabee's reaction was instructive too. He did not become combative. Instead, he listened, and then acknowledged the depth of her remarks. That acknowledgement, brief and measured, shifted the narrative. It turned what could have been a long-running clash into a teachable moment. His base split in its response. Some admired the engagement and admitted to learning something. Others felt threatened by the implied challenge to a single, unchallenged tradition. But even critics conceded that the public discourse had been elevated in a way few debates managed to do. Beyond the media cycle, the exchange produced quieter consequences. Community leaders reported renewed interest in Bible study groups that emphasized original languages and translation differences. Young voters, often skeptical of political religiosity, shared the clip with captions like, "This is how leaders should talk about faith." Churches that favor rigorous study saw increased attendance at weekday study sessions. For Crockett, the moment expanded her profile beyond policy wonk to someone who could hold both spiritual language and public responsibility in the same breath. For Huckabee, it was a reminder that credentials and competence come in different forms. But the most important outcome may be what this moment revealed about public expectations. Too often, public discussion is reduced to slogans because slogans are efficient for mobilization. Yet when someone answers a complex question with clarity and care, it forces the public to attend to nuance. That can be uncomfortable. Nuance does not click as readily as outrage, but it can also be healing. It invites people to slow down, to listen, and to consider that disagreements about texts, whether sacred or constitutional, require study, not just declamation. There is also a lesson here about power and restraint. The person who yells first often intends to intimidate, to take the floor by force. The person who answers with knowledge and composure refuses to be intimidated, and instead reshapes the terms of the debate. In public life, that is a rare and valuable skill. It is the kind of competence that sustains institutions and builds trust across lines of identity and ideology. In the days that followed, political strategists adjusted messaging, pundits reran the clip in slow motion, and preachers from various traditions referenced the exchange in sermons, either as a caution against weaponizing Scripture or as an example of how faith can be argued intelligently in public. The clip became an educational resource and a rhetorical template. It sparked conversations about what it means to be religious in a pluralistic democracy. Not a private question of belief, but a public question of how those beliefs are expressed, tested, and held accountable. What should viewers take away from this? First, that preparation matters. Whether one agrees with Jasmine Crockett's answers or with Mike Huckabee's approach, the episode demonstrates that public life rewards those who prepare, who study, and who can explain with patience. Second, that faith in public life is a complicated thing. It bridges private conviction and public obligation, and treating it as if it were only one or the other impoverishes both. Third, and most fundamentally, that discourse shaped by learning and restraint is more likely to persuade than discourse shaped by volume. This was more than a single televised exchange. It was a small moment that reveals a larger possibility. That politics need not be a contest of shouts, but can be a contest of ideas in which depth, clarity, and respect carry the day. If anything, the scene taught a simple civic truth. Knowledge disarms bluster, and calm clarity can win an argument without humiliating an opponent. For those who watched, the lesson was plain. Speak with preparation, answer with conviction, and never underestimate the power of knowing what you believe and why.